So an architecture, high level, I accept. What that's trying to say is we are a data-driven business. Wouldn't it be good if we could put all our data into one kind of area where we could then start to look at the performance of roads, because our buses are telling us every 5 seconds where they are. That would then tell us if we're having problems in an area, perhaps. So we need to increase the number of sensors coming in. That's kind of IoT. We then need to integrate it or ingest it in various ways, bring it into a centralized location. Mapping is quite important, because if you think about surface, the only thing that correlates a lot of our data is actually time and place, and therefore this all needs bringing down onto a common mapping platform, so that we know that that traffic accident coming in from the police is why these buses are running slowly, and we need re-timed traffic lights in a particular area. So mapping is quite important. Standardizing how we hold data and keep it accurate and fresh. So what's the governance? If anybody did know a good answer for that, where I'm using quite unstructured approaches to data, so everything's not in HDFS. It's going to be a collection of different databases and stores. I'm really interested. It needs to be searchable. So where we're at is Elasticsearch offers us lots of power in terms of the time and place correlation of information. So that's featuring with what we're doing, come up later. Security, we're forming a secure enclave. TfL has been running congestion charging for about 12 years now, where we've been looking at how to handle evidential records, but then use that data as well. So we've got some quite good experience in creating records that have got headers that we can share, and then encrypted records that are protected by keys that we can control access from. And at the moment, we're looking at those approaches to create the secure enclave and segregate data. I mentioned with the operator, so the information that we're getting into the data hub, if you like, that's driving our operations and our responses to the situation. And so there's a strong connection between operational technology and the database. So we've been looking at the platforms to create that kind of environment, so that the London Street Control Centre is actually looking at real-time data, responding to incidents, identifying them, and we're then able to publish that out. So the idea is we have a central data hub which is going to be kind of refreshed and clean all the time. That's driving the operational systems. As the operational systems create data, so we've seen an incident, we think that's a 20-minute delay on this journey, then the integration will start to push that kind of information out to the public through the collaboration channels, TfL Online, various Twitter feeds, and that will become increasingly automated. Therefore, we help people rather than, running into the back of a traffic jam and then hearing the message to say there's a traffic jam. Actually, we tell you quickly enough that you can avoid it. That's also working with the sat-nav providers, etc., so that they can reroute you again before you actually hit the problems. Analytics and visualization, no single answer for that sort of thing. So just like anyone else, we've been looking at quite a range of tools, but that's for internal use. We have quite a vibrant R community building up. Their key barrier at the moment is they can't get access to a lot of the data. The data hub fixes it. So that's where we are. I think the other thing that's maybe important is, as a policy-based company, i.e. we respond to the mayor, he sets our direction. Things change very quickly. So when we started off, there wasn't such a focus on emissions and air quality. Sadiq has introduced quite a focus on that, and therefore we'll be looking at how you then start to ingest things in that area. Just like to mention Waze being there, because again, that's kind of, for us, showing how public organisations can better work with the market in that ways are sharing for free their data with us, not just London, but any large public company, and we're now publishing more data back to them to help improve the experience for Waze customers. We hope that's kind of the model moving forward, because other conversations we've had, you know, people want quite a lot of money for useful data. So what does it start to look like? What traditional approaches haven't worked. You know, we have lots of suppliers coming in talking to us about great technology. How do you turn these things into things that are sticky? How do you reskill an organisation with very traditional kind of skills to then suddenly do, you know, data science, if you like, or move from writing SQL to Python? It's not straightforward, and certainly I think we don't have a technology problem. There's lots of technology solutions to everything we're trying to do already available in the market. What is always our constant barrier is the skills to configure. So we're using hackathons quite a lot as a way of kind of testing the technology and seeing where skills exist. We learn some interesting things at hackathons about our data, such as our accident statistics data, which is officially published every year and goes back a long way. We have data collection problems with it. Why do we know that? Because we gave it to some data scientists, and they looked at it and they said, you have a cluster of accidents around an old people's home. We can kind of see the logic of that. It's an old people's home, it's near the city centre, so maybe they're crossing some busy roads to get to the shops. But why is there a cluster of children having accidents around a children's hospital? They'd never be there. They don't play at the hospital. You know, so they were probably interviewed in the hospital, and that was the location of the incident. The problem with that is that drives policy. So we'll probably put traffic calming around the hospital. You know, the boroughs will do things, and actually the data was flawed. And so data science has really been seen as a way of exploring data and getting more value out of it and making us think about it. But we struggle with the skills to implement it ourselves still. We're getting better. So we've done these things. This is just an example of one of the technologies we're using. It's not new, it's complex event processing, which has been around. But for us, it's very SQL-like, and therefore as a business that has good SQL skills, rather than writing a lot of Python or Java, we actually can get into a language that probably our people are more familiar with. Then as we standardise on mapping and things are improving. What do those 3 lines of code start to give you? Something like that, which is Speaker's Corner. The circles, amber and red, there are traffic sensors. We have 14,000 traffic sensors around London. We only use this data in a control system today. We don't have any visualizations like this operationally. 14,000 sensors, they scan every quarter of a second. That ends up being about 400 million events a day. So you need a scalable platform. And we've been looking at how we do this. So we've shared this data a number of times. This and another one, which I haven't got slides for, were probably the best results we've had. But here we're taking, you know, here's a car, here's the gap between this and the next car. So if traffic's moving slowly, it's amber. Of course, it's London, so nothing would be green, right? And if the traffic's saturated, i.e. it's sat queuing, it's red. And then from that, we figured out the flow rate of the roads. Once you've kind of got to that level of information, we're really starting to get in a position where we can then start to measure traffic as flow rather than traffic as things just moving down between junctions. Waze helps a lot, and we're now starting to correlate traffic flow as measured by Waze with what we can see from our sensors. But we can now do things like figure out the fastest journey based on the actual real road performance right now. It's not in Journey Planner, by the way. So that's good. That's the kind of platform that we're using. WSO2 we're using as our integration platform anyways. They're quite widely used in TfL now, and it was their event processor, which is based on Sidhu, that was doing this. The prediction was coming from Spark and the Spark machine learning libraries. Lucene is the API on top of Elasticsearch. So they're the sorts of technologies that we're starting to look at. R was used for some of the background as well. What was interesting was, so this is kind of very good and we can start to make it work, and we saw a chunk of London done with this platform. At the last hackathon, another group using the Google Cloud Compute platform, therefore data flow and TensorFlow, were processing the whole of London in 10 minutes, which was reasonably impressive and the fastest we've seen. We unfortunately aren't connected to Google, so maybe we will be in the future. The idea of this would be that because everything's being produced and then published as an API, is we will start to publish more information to the community through our APIs, and therefore we'll start to stimulate both the sat-nav companies to take this data alongside the flow data they have and enrich that, but also there's opportunities for the development community to connect to our APIs, and people write apps as well. So, you know, that's the direction of travel. No dates. So the summary is, as I've mentioned, technology isn't the issue. There's a number of different approaches. Skills, and then I think very specifically for a large public sector organisation, business change is the biggest inhibitor to moving these things forward. You can't go and buy an intelligent transport system off the shelf, and everyone's very nervous about us trying to build it ourselves, or just find the right partners even to then build it. So that makes things slow. And then the market itself isn't really geared, so by the market I mean the software companies, they're not really geared to work with us in a way that makes it easy. So I showed you an example of one company that attended a hackathon. They're going to get a lot of traction within TfL because of that, and people are already talking about additional work. And that's really, that's them being quite novel, whereas most companies kind of want to sell you a product and then they want to sell you professional services afterwards. That creates a lot of barriers if you're doing public procurement, and therefore engaging with us more and kind of sharing some IP initially, only visualizations, we haven't got the code, but it creates the momentum within the organisation to then drive change. So that I think is an opportunity for the market to be more successful in the public sector. Cool. So any questions?
Hi. You mentioned CityMapper earlier. How do you feel about them? Are they almost not a competitor, but are you happy for them to use your data, or would you rather be the one having that popular app yourself?
We view CityMapper as a success story in that if TfL tried to write apps, you'd probably still be waiting for us to release the first one, which is a little bit what I've been saying about trying to do some of this tech. Whereas by simply creating APIs and then saying to the market, you go run with it, we've stimulated quite a lot of growth. Citymapper has become a business, you know, we feel, because of what they were able to do in London and then transplant around the world. So it's a success. And our ambition is to release more and more relevant data, and therefore the services on Citymapper and other places will just increase as a consequence. So we're not trying to control it. The one thing I think we struggled with is branding, and you know, we like to see powered by TfL, just to get some recognition. But that's kind of the position that we hold.
Hi. I think TfL has been exemplary at sharing data, samples of data or live APIs.
Yeah.
My question relates to dynamic pricing or search pricing and utilization of, for example, Oyster card data, the volumetrics,
Yes.
not absolute numbers, to drive prices so people can make better decisions about the time of travel.
It's being looked at. The last hackathon we ran was actually about transport demand, and so we were looking at sharing the loading on trains, the number of available seats, and then the number of people coming in and out of stations, so that again the architecture I showed was actually used to start creating APIs that could then, you know, if you were a traveller, you could see when you catch a train and probably get a seat. So we're looking at that sort of thing. It's still the early days. We have to work quite hard to put that data together, but it is coming.
We are the company that presented that idea at Innovate UK Run.
Right.
I see tomorrow last year.
Yeah. No,
on the train load.
Okay. There was we ran a hackathon. Yeah. I mean, it's a good idea. Everybody wants it. When's the best journey? And this is better informed customers. But we published quite a lot of data about a month ago, and ran a hackathon. And you know, you start to get the innovation from the market. So one company, it was a company, put voice over the top, so you could ask your phone, when's my best journey, and download it back. So there's lots of, you know, our point is we will give you the APIs, the market will stimulate what you do with it.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I'm a great fan of public transit systems, so it was very informative. And my question is a little bit off topic, but I think it's still data relevant. So you see, from time to time, I see people with the paper questionnaires at stations, and they're asking commuters where did they go and details about their journey.
Yeah.
So I've been always wondering, why is that? Because you can get all the data from your Oyster card details, and you know, what new data are you collecting in addition to what you already have from Oyster card data? Why is that?
It's because we're a traditional business. And we've been running something called TODS, which is the, I think, Transport Operational Origin Destination Survey, for a long time. And therefore, to keep some consistency, sometime around November the 17th, you will find people doing a manual survey. That doesn't always correlate with the Oyster data, but again, because of the heritage, the TODS data is used for planning the railway a lot more than Oyster data, and this is all around our kind of heritage and our ability to change. Okay, one more. There's a gentleman at the front, if that's feasible.
I have a loud voice anyway, so.
I'm here.
Thanks. So I live where West Ham used to play football.
Right.
And it always struck me how well I know. It always struck me how well TfL and the police coordinated themselves in terms of dealing with big games such as the Tottenham versus West Ham game.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, on the back of London 2012, if there were any success stories, any lessons learnt, and any ways that you're moving forward in terms of sharing data with the police and the various huge sporting organisations you have across London.
Yes, the Olympics was introduced a lot of change, and in actual fact, as a consequence of the Olympics, surface as a business area was reorganised in order to reduce the barriers of communication and sharing. We now have an operational centre that has tunnels and structures, the police, roads and buses all in one place. Again, I have a sense of humour, so I'm still smiling because the communication between the bus centre on one side of a room and the roads on the other side of the room means somebody walks about 2 miles a day. Okay, we are addressing that in what we're doing with SITs, and information will be shared electronically. But events we set up quite well generally. But again, to give you the idea of scale, Quiet Weekend in September, we had 33 events. So that's at the low end of the number of events across London that we're managing. So they have got pretty slick at it. But the Olympics did really change the coordination that went on, and it's much improved. We still haven't yet joined up Surface and the Tube, but that will happen. Okay, thank you very much.